Panel discussion. So we're here with Jeremy and Sarah. You guys know these, and we're talking about facilitating communication between design, construction, and maintenance preservation divisions. And this is one of my pet peeves, really. I used to work on the road side of the house, and you'd go out to the field, and all these construction inspectors and project engineers would say, oh, the designers came up with these stupid details or whatever, and then you'd go out to a year later and they'd still have the same detail. So we're looking for ideas or best practices for improving that communication. And so we did send out a survey and got some good responses back. Of course, I don't have that survey in front of me, but to start off right off the bat and ask Sarah and Jeremy to kind of share some of their best practices between how to facilitate that communication.
We had been practicing this presentation discussion for, I don't know, hours, months, weeks, days, years, maybe, preparing our entire lives for this moment. And so, but what we wanted to make sure came across is that we know it's close to the end of the conference, and so we wanted to add a little levity, so that's why it looks like we're winging it, but actually everything is completely under control. So one of the things I think that is critical, and so I mentioned yesterday, most of my career has been in the design role. So I worked for consulting companies before I came to the DOT for a lot of years. And in that role, you really are focused on, okay, what are the standards, what are the requirements, what are the details that the owner wants to use, and then you figure out how you can do that as efficiently as possible. And so that's great as long as you have a good understanding of what happens after they break ground, right? And so one of the things that in Indiana we've really been trying to focus on is how do I build relationships? I think the communication aspect of coordinating between construction, maintenance, and design really comes down to two things, and that's trust and that's communication. In the role that I'm in now, I'm trying to work very collaboratively, and being very intentional about having meetings with the other parts of the agency that really are responsible for construction and for maintenance. And in a lot of what happens, you kind of have to do a lot of legwork just to get to the point where people are willing to tell you, hey, here's what I don't like about your detail. Not that we've ever had bad design details in the state of Indiana, but if it had happened, they would have had a lot of good feedback for me. And so I think from the design standpoint, and I guess saying the part that designers need to own in this is recognizing that you have to be very proactive, and reaching out to the people who are going to be building it, going out, for those project meetings while it's under construction, and being willing to stand behind your design, away from the bulldozer, and ask, hey, what didn't go right? What didn't go right on this? What could we have done better? Following up with that, once it's out there, having the conversation with maintenance, and that's just a routine feedback loop of having that conversation and coordination to try and discover, okay, what details are we having problems maintaining? Because one of the things that I've learned in my time with the agency is that most of those design details could be perfectly good details, but they really depend on what is our ability to maintain them, and what's our interest in maintaining them, right? Because it's not just about whether or not we can. Sometimes the question needs to be whether or not we should. And so, places where we have to have expansion joints in places. We're never going to be 100% jointless with all of our bridges. And so the places where we have expansion joints, what's the right type of joint that's going to put us on a frequency of maintenance that we can sustain organizationally and from a cost standpoint? And I didn't just say that thing about joints because you're back there, Nick, but yeah, so, I think that those are critical things from the design standpoint. Sarah, if you wanted to add, I guess from the maintenance perspective, just your thoughts on, maybe how you do the coordination in Minnesota?
So from Minnesota's perspective, being decentralized, right, that's a challenge because our maintenance and inspection is performed by the districts and our design is performed by the bridge office. And so we have some roles within the bridge office that help really support that communication. So my role is at bridge operations support, so I support the districts. That's the main function, with training, with best practices. And part of that was we developed this bridge maintenance supervisors organization. And so we have twice a year, we get together with all of our bridge maintenance supervisors. We talk about challenges, we talk about issues. We sometimes bring in our standards engineer, our design engineer, to talk about new standards or new thoughts on where we're going to go with our designs, so that they have the opportunity to comment on those standards and designs. Any additional challenges we can bring directly to the Structural Standards Review Committee, because I and my coworkers sit on that committee. And so it's a direct line basically between maintenance and the Structural Standards Research Committee. A lot of the details too, we have a close relationship with some of our structural standards engineer and with our designers. And if they have a question for maintenance on a repair project, they can bring it to Greg or myself, who's part of our unit, and we can work with the supervisors to see if they like that detail or where they'd like to go with that type of repair or design. We also have within the bridge office regional bridge construction engineers, and you've heard Paul Polarski talk earlier today. He is one of the regional bridge construction engineers, or was. He's now moving to a different role. And we have 4 of those, so 1 in the north, 1 in the south, and 2 in the metro district. And their role is to support the districts with bridge construction. So they also do foundation recs and assist with the design and the specifications, but they support the districts in different types of questions. If there are issues or challenges that could affect long-term maintenance on those bridges, then they bring in the district counterparts, the bridge folks that aren't always involved in that construction project, right? Because it's a separate department. So bring them in on some of those decisions because long-term they will be the ones that will be managing that bridge and maintaining that concern or that issue that was brought up in the field. And so I think those roles within the bridge office make it a little bit easier for us to communicate with our district staff, because those are some of our key functions of those roles. We also hold regional bridge maintenance and bridge construction meetings every few years. And so we gather in struggles that have been had through construction, either through the construction side or through the maintenance side. And we bring those questions in ahead of time, and we address those in those meetings. And we have an opportunity for both district construction and district maintenance staff to comment on any of those struggles or issues and why it's so important, why we have this type of information in our specs, why it's important to wait 28 days before you put that pavement relief joint in. They see it in maintenance.
So Wisconsin, obviously, kind of a little different model where the counties do most of the maintenance or a lot of that type of work. So can you give us a little, kind of talk about how Wisconsin handles that with that, because of your kind of unique, I'll call it unique, setup with the counties doing a lot of this type of stuff?
So in Wisconsin, we utilize the counties to do all maintenance work. We do not have bridge maintenance staff that are DOT employees. Through a memorandum of understanding, they're contracted to do the work in their counties, whether it's roadway or bridge maintenance. A lot of the counties do have bridge groups or bridge units. Some do not. So we do contract out some things. We also have the counties do routine maintenance like sweeping, deck sealing, deck washing. Some of them are adept enough to do joint replacements, as Bill Oliva, my counterpart in WISDOT, showed yesterday on the local bridge strengthening. It's been somewhat eye-opening to note how efficient and how effective some of the crews can be. We do have within WISDOT our own repair and maintenance crew. It's one, and they really do specific stuff. We do heat straightening in Wisconsin, and we will do some bearing repair, some tensioning adjustments and that type of thing, but it's really only maybe a 2 to 4 person group, and they also are part of the bridge inspection, so they operate the snoopers, and we utilize, one of the snoopers is actually a platform snooper, so they utilize that for maintenance. But realistically, all of our routine maintenance is done by the county forces within those 72 counties and the bridges they handle. And they do that on the state side. Specifically, they will do some of their own work and some of the township work. But so we're a little bit different that way. We rely heavily on our regional bridge program managers in our 5 regions to coordinate and oversee that work as part of their jobs, and the other half is obviously to do the inspections on the state side, then oversee the local inspections. So we're a little different, and we don't have the size and staffs of some of the other states.
How do you share then, how do you get the feedback from the counties up to your person in your position to, what's the best practice, or how do you get that feedback?
Again, we rely on our engineers out in the region. So we have 5 regions with 8 offices. Some of our regions have double offices, and we have a engineer out there who coordinates and then brings that to my staff and myself through various channels, whether it's email coordination. We do have twice a year we have kind of a tech type meeting where we discuss some of the options of products and types of repairs that are being done. And then we have a once yearly annual meeting where we bring in all the inspectors and have similar discussions. I think as we discussed either in one of the sessions yesterday or one of the breakout sessions, the challenge becomes when you get into the metropolitan areas. We know bridge washing and sealing has great opportunities, but in some cases you can't close system ramps. You can't be doing things up on a 5-tier interchange up on the top level without affecting all those bridges and ramps below. So it gets challenging to do some of the routine maintenance we know which goes directly into preservation and preventive maintenance. You just don't have the opportunity because either traffic, you can't close it, or you get a 4 or 5 hour window in there, and it just takes forever. Even as we go into some of the overlay applications, we can't generally on some of the bigger interchanges do your traditional 1.5-inch overlays because you can't mill it and prep it properly and then do your overlay and get it back. Literally you have one night at best to open it, get it done. So you're looking at all those long-term advantages, but short duration of operations is because of the traffic constraints. So things we know and have proven work up in our northern areas in the less populous, we can't translate those down to the metropolitan areas just because of the traffic and some of the constraints and the taking the lanes out of traffic.
I just wanted to add, one other thing we're trying to promote with our districts is to have the maintenance staff work with our construction staff throughout a construction project, and especially kind of near the end of the construction project, so that they could potentially walk through with our construction staff and assist them with making some punch list items. And the other piece of it for Tim's benefit is so we can accomplish our initial inspection on time.
I know every state kind of is organized a little bit differently, but I think the important thing is figuring out who the key collaborators are within the different areas. And so within Indiana, one of the things, and it's actually a position I was in when I first came to the DOT, was we have district bridge asset engineers, and so the asset owners for the district. And that's really our key contact that connects the maintenance teams with the construction teams. And so those asset engineers will go out on final closeout of projects with the construction crew and walk the job and see how everything turned out, if there is some cracking in the decks or things that we think need to be remedied before final closeout. They can have those conversations. If there's things that we think were kind of unavoidable that we know need to be addressed at a future date, they can coordinate with maintenance to set some of that up. So I think that's an important part of our program.
Rick talked about access, just speaking again a little bit about Minnesota, we had actually in our policy document for bridge inspections, we had to put, it was tough for me to understand how, the traffic folks really have the power, especially in those metropolitan regions. So we actually had to put in a policy statement in the state documentation saying if a MBI fell below a certain number that we had to get a kind of almost a hands-on inspection of that structure. So that kind of helped us out because otherwise there was no chance of accessing those structures, high volume, high traffic structures. Jeremy touched a little bit about asset management, kind of another federally direct policy for everybody to, develop asset management programs. So how about we talk a little bit about that, kind of get communication, but it's a communication document. You guys want to talk about the development there? I
feel like I've got, the Federal Highway and State DOT representative here, so maybe I should be between the two of you. I don't know how. my Fed office, division office isn't here, so I can say what I want, I guess. So we're going to cut the recording, right? No. So yeah, the asset management part of it, and I was thinking about this because we've been having a lot of conversations within our state about new technology, right? And as technology advances, opportunity advances, and it actually, if done properly, I'm not saying it always is, but if done properly, it should be a great way to leverage communication, to facilitate that communication within the agency, because my wife was really mad at me that I did this, but I'm kind of an Amazon junkie, and so I got on Amazon, I ordered a big old Staples Easy button, and I put that in my office and stuck it on my desk, and I keep that there as a reminder to myself and to my team that we need to be doing everything we can to make things easy for people, because the more cumbersome the process, the less likely people are to comply with the process. If somebody says, well, hey, to get approval for making an important decision while things are happening fast, I need to fill out a form, and then I need to email it to somebody, who emails it to somebody, who emails it to somebody, who then you have 5 signatures, and then 3 of those people are on vacation, and so 6 months later you get approval to do something that really should have been a pretty straightforward approach. That's kind of cumbersome to actually this conversation, right? Because it's prohibitive to facilitating that communication. And so one of the things that we try to focus on, and asset management is critical for this, because within asset management systems, we can incorporate all of the institutional knowledge that comes in through a project development and an asset lifecycle process. So being able to look at something and say, hey, this is performing great. I'll use the positive side of that. This is performing great. What product did we put in here? Because we love it and we want to use more of it. So being able to have that knowledge from the system, that facilitates communication right there, and it engages all 3 aspects that we're talking about. So that's something that I think as we continue to advance, with technology and with, whether it's an e-construction initiative, whether it's with asset management systems, just being very intentional about the more we bring this technology in, the more we should be unburdening our process, getting rid of forms, getting rid of emails to, God and all creation for every decision that needs to be made, and then finding ways to kind of automate the process a little bit. So if somebody is, on a bridge and they decide something needs to be done, we can use technology to make that a quick process, that they're not acting on an island, but they can collaborate quickly with everybody that needs to know about the decision and facilitate it quicker.
So one of the challenges, too, that we have with technology, we have so much data coming in, right? And it's all in different systems. We tried to tie our maintenance and our inspection data together. So it is within the same system. We tie our maintenance tasks to our bridge elements. So you can kind of see the progression, right? If you have a deficiency, then it should be in the maintenance module, and then when it's completed, it can potentially provide a benefit back to your elements. However, like our construction data is in a separate system. We struggle sometimes with getting all of our as-built information. We struggle with even getting notification from the districts that the bridge is open to traffic and that we need to go inspect it within 90 days, right? Then we're out of compliance. And so with technology, and with some of this, it's been a big challenge to try to pull all that information together in a way that we can make the best decision possible, right? And we're trying to make additional tools. We pull data out of our inspection system, and we perform a risk analysis, and we provide information to the districts on, project prioritization. But even with that, you need some people within the district, some people within the bridge office to look at that information and make sure it makes sense. You need some maintenance staff to look at that information to make sure it makes sense, because they're the ones that are on that bridge. They see what's going on with that bridge, and does it make sense to have an overlay, or really is it at a redeck at this stage, even though the data may say it's at an overlay. So it's integrating all that information from inspection, from maintenance, to make the best decision possible for that structure. I think the key is to be able to get that information, and Jeremy mentioned also just products, right? What is working? We perform trials all the time, right? So the first bridge we put fibers on, or a different type of mix, or zip strips in the barrier, whatever it is, documenting that in a system somewhere, not in a spreadsheet on somebody's desktop, documenting that in a system that everyone has access to, that the districts have access to, right? The bridge owners have access to, so they know when they go out there and they see something going on, that it might have been something we tried, something different we tried, and we need to evaluate that to know if we want to change our standard. You know, and our maintenance crews will do a lot of different trials for our research and for our standards folks too, to see if something might work before we want to change a standard. And so that product evaluation is crucial to moving forward, and sometimes that data gets lost and it doesn't help us move forward.
Jeremy mentioned as-builts and the ability to incorporate as-builts into, obviously the maintenance folks, as-builts are, essential to really understand what's going on with that structure, especially down the road. Anybody want to share some of their best practices or the best way to get as-builts back into the system, or what they do to get that accomplished?
One thing we started doing was our shop drawings for the pre-stressed beams and for joint details or bearings. We're capturing the shop drawings and getting them into our maintenance folders, our electronic maintenance folders, which then that's good to know later on. It's not such a guessing game.
We've used some automation tools with our construction administration. We use FHWA for a lot of our construction administration and other applications. But as part of that, we've developed some in-house applications to actually go in and harvest the as-builts in the construction's finals process that's happening. Because the plans are laid out in Wisconsin with different tabs for different, structures or roadway, real estate, whatever. So with a little bit of computing intelligence to identify, which tabs are which, we'll just go in and harvest from the as-builts and then deposit those into our bridge management system.
Further discussion about FHWA. I know Minnesota is starting to use incorporate FHWA. Any folks again want to comment on things they like about FHWA, maybe the things they don't like about it, best practices? Minnesota's starting to use it in construction for sure, but there is a tab for maintenance, and it's theoretically could be used for the whole. You haven't seen that? All right, I won't put you on the spot.
Well, I think the hope is, though, if we can use the FHWA construction software, that potentially we can data mine some of the information that we aren't retrieving. That's our goal.
Things we try to, so we've been using, Site Manager for some of our data collection for a long time, and so we're actually developing an application for construction inspectors to be able to get away from paper form, whether taking tickets or material certs or the different things that people in construction do. Getting that into a data format, and this is, going back to my asset management days, I just started to get on a soapbox about the fact that, words in a file don't do me any good from an asset management standpoint. I need data points. And so, I think the exciting thing about seeing different platforms, whether it's FHWA or other platforms, that begin to make it easy for an inspector, because I recognize that's a hard job, and job number one out there is staying safe. And so you don't want somebody fumbling around with, computer applications trying to figure out what do I put where, and do I have to type this, and, sitting in the grass, trying to type, a paragraph about the asphalt that they're putting down. And so making it easy, and using those platforms, then to be able to turn whatever they're putting in there into data, and that data can be, sent into your asset management system and shared with the other programs, the other platforms that you're using, whether it's, design knowledge or asset management knowledge. So that's something we've really focused on, and so we're excited about those applications, and we do hope that we can start to integrate, that really the initiative for that application, it's on an iPad, was more to facilitate the e-construction initiative that we're going to, and a lot of that is for material certifications and different things, but we're really excited about it because it just gives us a whole new level of insight that we can take advantage of, and the data is big, there's no question. We talked about that during the bridge inspection session yesterday, is that we're dealing with big data. That is a challenge right now, but the good thing that we know is that, our computers will be obsolete, mine already is, I got it last year. The computers will get faster, the ability to store data will increase, and so the one thing you can't do easily at least, is go back and get what you didn't collect initially. Even if you feel like you're collecting way more than you can handle at the time, that's going to benefit you down the road because it's there. And so as we get smarter about how to work with the data, and as technology catches up with our ability to process and manipulate the data, then that's really going to leverage that we're going to have an insight that wasn't really possible 10, 20 years ago.
Thinking about bridge specifications, special provisions, Minnesota, from a federal highway perspective, we're looking at, trying to, a lot of times we see large claims, change orders, and a lot of times that's contributed back to maybe a weak special provision or a weak specification. And it's partly to help that out, MnDOT has a special provision committee where the idea is to flush out these special provisions, to get comments on them, and to hopefully make those special provisions strong. Again, from a federal highway perspective, I would love to have the bridge office in Minnesota to have a specification engineer, where that person's primary responsibility would be to, review any special provision specification before it's put on to a project to make sure it's, as strong as as possible. The approach to reviewing, developing special provision specifications.
So in a lot of cases for Minnesota, the design specifications originate within the design section, but then the regional bridge construction engineers will look through those specifications. Do they go to the districts, Paul, too? The regional bridge construction engineer's job is kind of to be that liaison from the construction side to review those special provisions and specifications to make sure that they're appropriate from what they've seen in the field. A lot of our construction unit is also involved in that special provisions group. And so they have a lot of experience from the field that they bring back to the specifications in design, and that helps it make a better spec.
I don't want to comment on whether or not, because I'm friends with people from Minnesota, so I don't want to comment on whether or not Minnesota needs a specification engineer to review all of those. I'm not sure if a PCA just got created or what, but yeah. So I think the thing with specifications, Indiana's doing something similar where we have a committee that reviews the specifications. It actually is pretty cumbersome, to try, because the number of provisions that get created, it is a lot of work. A lot of work. Maybe taking a step back from the challenge that presents, and recognizing the reason why it's important is that I think a lot of times, our contracting community, when you meet with them as a group, we meet with our AGC, somewhat regularly, and we try and have conversations, about, hey, why is something going wrong with different things, and when they get in a group where they're all just working for the betterment of the state and for the industry as a whole, you really start to understand why those things are important. And so one of the things that I've learned through those conversations is that they actually want oversight. But what they want is consistent oversight. So they want consistency in the application and enforcement of your specifications, because then they know that they can bid it, knowing that they're going to be held to the same standards as their competitor. And so the lack of consistency, my opinion at least, from those conversations is really what causes the biggest problem. Tim spoke about it, with deck sealing earlier, and the application to sealers and silane is that specification is critical because a contractor has a job to do, and their job is, intrinsically they want to do a good job. Hopefully, they want to do a good job, but their job is also to make sure that they earn a profit. And the only way they're going to earn a profit is if they're able to bid the job with whatever margins they need to earn that profit. And so risk becomes the critical part of the equation. And so we can mitigate that risk by having quality specifications, but ensuring that they're enforced consistently, so that you don't have, one inspector saying, yeah, I don't really worry about that, and then the next inspector saying, oh, this is the most important thing. I was born to enforce this spec. You get that broad spectrum sometimes. So that's something that we're always trying to focus on. And then another thing is just awareness. And even had some conversations over the past couple days, with representatives here, is I think it's important that people can see changes coming. The worst thing, and I try to tell my team this all the time, is that the worst thing we can do is surprise the industry with some great idea. right? They need to know it's coming. They need to be able to see, see things coming, and that collaborative feedback that you can get, outside of a project process. Obviously, you can't talk about it within a project without, taking some extra steps. But outside of a project process, when you're changing standards, and, we want our industry at the table to help us make sure the changes that we're making are appropriate and fair and can be enforced consistently.
I think Jeremy made a good point about it's not just about the good specification, right? It's about the implementation and the enforcement of those specifications. We have started a bridge construction inspector training program. That has helped some because, some of these inspectors originally are on different types of projects. They, may be on a bridge project this week and on a different type of project a different month. We really want to train the inspectors that are on our bridge projects so that they know what those specs are and how important they are. And then also, as I mentioned before, the regional meetings between construction and maintenance has helped to kind of bring some of those struggles and issues forward so that they are implementing the specs in a way. But it's a challenge because, staffing, resources, through our districts is challenged to be able to have someone out there to watch every single operation as well.
Do any states have a state bridge specification engineer? Okay, Wisconsin. What made you kind of the advantages you see as from a state perspective of having?
In our centralized Bureau of Project Development, we do have a state specification engineer, as I see it, and I believe others. It kind of manages our overall standard specification for bridges and roads in Wisconsin, and works with business area specific leads and owners of specific specifications. Throughout our organization, you'll have, whether it is concrete or asphalt or steel or other aspects, you'll have an area expert who will edit and maintain content in those specs. But then our central specification engineer, manages format and publication and things of that nature, and also serves, in the role of content as well. We don't expect, as I understand it, that person to be the expert in all specifications, but they manage the specification in general with the help of a lot of business area experts. And just along the lines of what Jeremy is talking about, we do also work with our stakeholders in industry on a regular basis through our Bridge Technical Committee, and agreed, you don't want to surprise them. You want to let them know what's coming for sure. You want to get input, but don't let them feel as if they're going to rewrite it for us. You know what I mean? In the end, we're the owner, and we set the bar, but we want to work with those stakeholders to make sure they know what we need, and we also understand what those implications are to them. We get a lot of feedback on issues related to safety and biddability of jobs. And if we're not listening, it manifests at higher prices or unreasonable risks for completion and things of that nature. So it really, in some respects, is a partnership, whether you want to accept that or not. We want to work with our industry to get the best products.
Yeah, and that's, just from an example, Minnesota, we implemented a new shape for our pre-stressed beams, and so that was happy to see that the folks went out to the precasters and said, hey, are you interested? And when are you going to have a form to incorporate that new beam shape? Well, thank you very much, Sarah and Jeremy, for holding my weight.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.